Spicer, Williamson,
Here.
and Mayor Atchison.
And thank you to our guests, Mayor-elect Snyder and Councilmember-elect Lanou, joining us this morning, and of course, City Attorney Harkness as well. We're going to move into items for individual discussion. 2021 budget. City Manager Snyder, please take it away.
Yes, thank you everyone and good morning, and thank you for taking the time to join us on this Saturday morning. We will be discussing the 2021 budget. I will say we have changed the way that we're going to do it just to be respectful of everyone's time, and I know when I've participated in this activity in the past, when we start going into every single individual line within all of the funds, it kind of starts to get rather confusing. So we have provided you a summary with all of the funds that are in the city's budget. We have provided you with a narrative that highlights any significant changes for these funds, and Finance Director Tom Mead he's going to walk through and go over those changes for 2021. So I will hand it over to Finance Director Tom Mead.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
And I trust, as Haley said, everybody does have in front of them a couple different pieces of information. The first one, I believe, well, there's a narrative. There should also be a general fund summary, which instead of years past when it was like 30 some pages, it is down to 1 page now because we're obviously summarize it all. Then there should be all the other funds summary, and then there are some charts. Everybody, I assume, has that information and ready to dive into it.
Yep.
Trying to prepare for this one this year, I really struggled with what I was going to say this morning, and I think it's an issue. I realize it's not an issue of not that we're not prepared or anything, but I mean, obviously, we had a couple of things happen. We had COVID. That was huge. We have a lot of unknowns from COVID. And the other thing, as I'm thinking about it, I kind of am going to use this analogy of like a sports team. The team's struggling, they're not doing well. Maybe they bring in a new coach, but they don't win the Super Bowl right away. It takes some time. It takes some years to get some consistency, to build the team, to get the tools and the resources and the players and everything. And I feel we've kind of been like that here, where we've had so much change. As I look at these numbers and stuff, I think, we've just spent a lot of time and a lot of resources, including money, starting over, because we're constantly changing leadership, it seems like. And I think, obviously, 2020 was no exception to that. If we take a look at the numbers, the general fund summary there, 2018 is on the far left, 2019 next to that. Those are actual numbers. The 2020 original budget's kind of the middle column. 2020 activity and where we're at year to date is the next column. 2020 projected and where we think we'll end up for this year is the second to the last on the right. And the farthest on the right is our 2021 budgeted or what we are presenting to you as our budgeted numbers. When I look at 2020 projected, the second to the last column on the right, you go down the bottom, we're looking at anticipating, and again, we try to be conservative in the current year. We're looking at a little under $50,000 short. Bear in mind, this is with COVID, and this was also with a city manager change. And when I look at that number, I think, it's not too bad considering what we went through. From COVID, our income tax is down just about 100,000 year to date from prior year. Revenue sharing, because the state went through and adjusted all their numbers on what they were going to pay out to the municipalities, is down 71,000 from what they told us they would give us. That's not compared to prior year. That's, every year they tell us what they're going to give us, and they're usually pretty spot on. In the past, we usually get a little more than what they tell us. This year, we're 71,000 short. And then bear in mind, in that figure, we also paid 100,000 to the land bank for tearing down the Union Steel building, and we also had a sizable payout for a city manager with a lot of accrued vacation and time that that they get paid out for. Not to mention, we're kind of paying 2 salaries for them at this point in time. And finally, there's I hate to say it, but that starting over cost. We spent a sizable amount of money in 2020 for new software and tools that the prior city manager felt that were required, and that was the direction we wanted to go. And now that's changed again. So again, there's always a lot of costs, it seems like, when we're starting over and trying to determine what direction we're going. And in addition to that always makes it a little challenging budgeting into the next year, because without knowing exactly who is going to be at the helm for sure, it's hard for us to know where to put those resources. If you look at the top numbers in that summary, we're projecting the general fund to bring in total about 4.6 million in revenue, and we have all these departments underneath it, and that revenue can be split out and shared between all those different departments. And there's always different ideas on where do we want our resources, what do we want to focus on. And again, we haven't had, when you get that leadership that's in there for long term, you've come up with a plan, you've got momentum, you're working towards it, and because these things don't happen overnight, and we've just been through a lot of change. So I don't know. I mean, it makes it a little tricky to budget too. So what we did basically is we tried to keep everything as much status quo as we could. Looking at 2021 with COVID, we are anticipating about a $50,000 reduction in income tax. Could be more, could be less, I don't know. The state, as of today, has said that we would be down about 1,200 in state revenue sharing, which is not much, except for the fact that you got to figure, that's $1 million, over $1 million of revenue, and they generally build in an increase each year for costs of inflation. So not only is that not built in, it actually is coming down a little bit from what they've told us so far. Same could hold true with Act 51 and some of the other money, because again, they're all based on sales tax, gas tax, stuff like that. And when COVID hits, nobody knows what's going to happen. So the way it stands right now, we are at we're looking at a budgeted for 2021 shortfall of about $148,855. The good news is our fund balance is still very healthy. We're, as you can see, I put in down below, that's still 25%. They recommend you have at least 15. We're still looking pretty good. And actually, let's take a minute if we can. If everybody could pull out those charts, those graphs that are down in your packet a little bit. Everybody got them? The colored charts? I mean, if you look at these, I guess the key things here, I guess I want to point out on a lot of the income,
I lost sound.
Hello.
I think the city hall side froze.
Yeah, they froze. We haven't.
Yeah, I think City Hall froze. Good morning, Nora, by the way.
Morning, Shane, and everyone else. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we back? Can you hear us now?
You're back, Tom.
Yep.
Right. Must be the system doesn't like our numbers, I guess. So, again, state shared sales and use tax, it's dropping for the first time. Like I said, they normally build in a cost of living increase into that, and it's scheduled to drop next year, projected to drop next year. Property taxes, this is kind of the one thing, we've talked about this before, that MML has lobbied hard with the state that with the proposal A way back in the 90s when it passed, the property taxes are not going to increase much at all, regardless of what happens in your community, no matter how well your community does, unless you have new construction, because it's capped that the proposal A will not allow it, as we're all aware, will not allow that revenue number to increase more than an inflationary number that they factor in, and it's usually about 1.5% or less. So it's very hard to keep up with costs when our tax money cannot increase at a higher rate than that. But the one I wanted to point out is the one that's all the green bars, the fund balance one. If you look at that, there's a dark black line going across about a little less than half, or about in the middle, somewhere in there. That's if you took the average of our expenses for the last several years there, that 587,000 would be on average where we would need to be on fund balance to be at our 15%. As you can see, we've been well above that every year. This year, like I said, we're projecting the ending the year at 25.6. So we're still well above the 15%. In light of everything, I guess, that's happened with COVID and other changes and everything and the unknowns, I guess I feel pretty good about this. When we started this budget, I was really concerned. I was thinking we could be seeing, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 shortfalls, and we were able to get some CARES Act grants and a few other things to carry us through. And so I don't know, at 148,000 short, I feel pretty good about it. I hope we can get some certainty going forward with COVID. I hope that turns around, the economy picks up, and I think we'll be pretty good shape going forward. Any questions on general fund? It was pretty quick, but no questions? If we look at the other fund summaries, or summary of other funds, whatever you want to call it. The first one is solid waste. Not a whole lot is changing there. We still have the millage. We obviously, as everyone's aware, had kind of more or less done away with the leaf pickup, although we still incur some expenses there as we have to go around and get leaves out of gutters and all that kind of stuff. So the guys do still devote some time to it, just not in the same manner as in the past. But all in all, everything is pretty much looking the same. And for 2021, we're anticipating about a $52,000 profit in solid waste. And we hope to end 2020 with about 107, almost $108,000 profit. And I might add too, on a lot of these funds, we've, the management team here, we have some ideas on things we would like to see, some changes, some things we'd like to get done and everything. But I guess, we're kind of to some degree, just kind of, like I said, waiting till we get some permanent Quite honestly, the city manager position, I guess we need to know who's gonna be there permanently to make sure they're on board with it. And we're all on the same page. So, there's solid waste has some excess money in there. There's some things, I know Patrick's had some good ideas on some things he'd like to do out there, including taking care of the old compost pile that the DNR's been honest about, or DEQ or Eagle, whatever you want to call them. But again, we got to make sure everybody's on board on the same page. And that kind of goes with all these funds. There's a lot of ideas, but again, we're just waiting to kind of get the green light to go forward with some of that stuff. So, any questions on solid waste?
I don't have any questions on the solid waste, and I do apologize. I want to go back to the general funds.
Okay.
And just so that I can make notes for myself to kind of refer back when we do the following year, just going through the line items, I've seen some big discrepancies, I guess, in between the years. And I just want to make notes so that I have that reference to go back to as to why there were big differences. Like under the lines for appropriations for city council, if you go across the years, there's some big jumps, and I guess I just want to know why.
The biggest thing that I can think of on city council was we did change there. In the past, there was the policy was to pay the council members for every meeting they attended, not only the city manager or the council meetings, but also the, if they were out in the community, if they were on the ABA board, DDA board, there was a lot of other community meetings that they would attend. There's also a little bit of that too is the MML charge. Membership charge is a pretty large, I think it's about, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, it's $10,000-$12,000 charge. And in the past, that was all put under city council, because city council tended to be the ones that attended most of the MML meetings and everything. But then we kind of decided it would make more sense to spread that out a little bit over all the funds, because really everybody in the city, takes advantage or benefits from being a member of MML. So that's some of the reason why the expenses have come down.
So where does that charge now go to?
It's spread out among, the different departments in the city. So every department's going to get a small piece of it, I guess, instead of one big chunk.
And does it account for the bringing the attorney in to do the trainings?
Oh yeah, I think we also had, as City Manager Snyder mentioned too, there were some requests in prior years to bring in an attorney to do training on council members, and that came with a pretty hefty price, which is probably in 18, I know that 40,000, I think that was a big chunk of that was that attorney.
Scott Smith.
Yep.
And then under the city manager, again, some pretty big jumps. And I know that it probably had to do with the issues with the past city manager and maybe payout. But for the budget in 18 and 19, was it just the city manager and assistant? Or were there other costs under that?
Well, a couple things. The city manager, actually a lot of things happened there. So for one thing, the city manager department over the years has changed some between just the city manager and a city manager with an assistant, whether it be an administrative assistant or an assistant city manager. That has changed and gone back and forth some over the years. But another big difference was historically, like in 18 and earlier, the city manager's salary was spread between all the funds in the city, with the idea that they oversee, all funds. in the city, so there's salary therefore, so everybody should participate in the cost of that. When we had Latanya Rufus as the city manager in 18, I guess it was, like, yeah, whatever year, I lose track of the years that they come and go. She made the decision, she said, no, that doesn't make sense to present it that way. She goes, I want all the city manager salary coming out of city manager. And then what we have done instead is increased an admin fee that the general fund then charges to all the other funds to help cover that cost. So that's the biggest jump in the city managers. Is it used to be spread throughout the city. Now it's all in this one department.
So one in 20 for the 2020 budget was 259,000. Was there a reason why there was such a big jump going to this past fiscal year's amount?
That would reflect the benefits that were negotiated in the previous city manager contract. So there were some hefty incentives or benefits that were negotiated, and that's what's reflected in the increase.
So then the recommended 2021 amount, so that's for the interim city manager, let's say, and then are we looking at getting an assistant? Is that correct?
Correct, yep.
And then anybody else under that or no?
No, other than the prior city manager's termination agreement did allow him to get paid like 6 months, I believe. So that does carry over into 2021 a little bit. I think like 2 months.
To
I think it goes
February,
through
yeah.
February.
Okay.
I don't know if when you're looking at those, you probably notice like code enforcement at 304. That is explained in the narrative. That actually is going to be kind of under public safety. So that's something new that, well, it used to be under public safety years and years ago. Then it kind of broke off and was under planning and zoning. Now we're proposing putting it back to public safety. So that's why that was zero all the prior years and why we now have an expense of 46,000 there for 2021. Does that answer most of your questions on that?
Yeah, I mean, those were really the two big line items that I was like, oh, okay, I think we need some explaining here.
Yeah, and I mean, a couple things. The way things have been done over the years has varied quite a bit, and every now and then there will be something rather large, you know, that, like for example, in general appropriations, the very bottom line there, you know, that's jumped a lot, but again, that was $100,000 payment to the land bank for Union Steel building in 2020. And it's going to be a $50,000 payment to them in 2021. So, I mean, you know, sometimes you get something like that that's unusually large that will occur 1 or 2 times or 3 times or whatever, and it can change the numbers drastically. I want to add too, if you go at some point and want to, you know, go through the detail information in the back, that will break a lot of that down. And we had meant to point this out, but kind of forgot to mention it. But we're definitely happy to sit down with any of you at any point after this morning if you want to, you know, come in and go through any of this. So if you have more questions, we'd definitely be happy to do that too. If you think of questions after today or whatever, so, or if there's things that just doesn't make sense to you, definitely let us know and we'll go over them.
I appreciate that.
Yep. So that on general fund. back to where we were. So how about solid waste? Any questions on that one? I think we've wrapped that one up. The next one, 243, the next couple are all under Amy Dupree's departments. She actually is over the 243 brownfield redevelopment, and really what this is the hotel parcel. That for the new council members that may not be aware, when the block where the hotel is, they agreed to get the state to approve it to be a brownfield to help take care of the costs of tearing down all the existing buildings that were there. And that there's grant money available from the state to help with those costs. So that's why they put it into this brownfield. And the brownfield then captures the tax from the hotel. And because it's in a DDA district, the DDA also captures taxes from the hotel. But there's an intergovernmental agreement between DDA and the brownfield where DDA gives their capture on that property to the brownfield. So basically what you see in the brownfield is all the tax capture on the hotel, whether it be from brownfield itself or DDA, and then they are required to pay most of that back to the state. Because some of it was grant money, some of it was low interest loan. So they are required then to pay that to the state. So that's why there is the money going out. They are allowed to keep $5,000 for administrative costs, which is why the fund balance is starting to grow a little bit. But for the most part, it's money in, and then we turn around and pay it to the state. Questions on that one?
It'd be nice once we can capture that.
Yes. Looking at the next one, 244 economic development, that's also under Amy's. I don't believe she had any changes or any significant changes planned in EDC. She's looking at a projected profit this year, 17,000, and a projected profit in 2021 of 1,500. I think she was talking of trying to spend some money on some site readiness stuff. So that's probably why the expenses are up a little bit there. Any questions on EDC? The next one is also under Amy, the 246 Business Incubator. This fund was originally named when we had the incubator building over there. And then over time, the food hub building was thrown into this one. And a few other, I think at one time they had the farmer's market kind of under the food hub and whatnot. But oddly enough, then they sold the incubator building. So the fund in which this was named for no longer had that building or that asset. So anyway, it's gone through some changes over the years, and now going forward, there's talk, of course, of I'm not sure exactly what they're got in mind with the food hub, but I think that it sounds like they're doing different plans with that, selling that or taking that out of the city's out from under the city's umbrella, I guess. So she has not budgeted anything in 2021 for this fund because both the incubator building will be gone and the food hub building will be gone, or at least that's the projection. Questions on that one? Next one is 247 TIFA fund. That's saying it's under Amy. The TIFA is similar to the DDA. It's a district out in the industrial park that captures tax money on those properties within that district or within the industrial park. And that money then is used to Ideally, it's used to like enhance the industrial park, you know, if they want to do new streets or lighting or curb, or if they had a big business coming in that needed, you know, special sewer and water or whatever, they have the ability to capture tax from those properties to enhance that district for future development. She's in that fund does fairly well. Like I said, it captures tax and doesn't have a whole lot of expenses right at the moment. So they're they're bringing in money every year. They're looking at a $35,000 profit this year and about $6,800 next year on a conservative basis. So any questions on that one? Next one, 248 is the DDA. That is the downtown development district here downtown. The biggest thing that has happened with DDA is the hotel, obviously. There really wasn't a whole lot going on in terms of tax capture, or because of that, then expense, because there wasn't any money coming in, so there wasn't any money going out. When the hotel was built, they started capturing a significant amount of money, but as I said earlier, they have to, under their agreement, give that to the brownfield. So in the end, it's kind of like it was before. They don't really have a lot of their own money to spend. In 2020, they're looking at about a $5,000 profit. In 2021, they're looking at about $2,400. They do have they do put on a car show in the summer. That's one of the things that I think about $1,000 or so to put that on. And other than that, they don't have a lot of expenses in the DDA. Are there questions on that one? And actually, I should add, those numbers may change a little bit. I think the DDA had a board meeting yesterday, and they talked about putting 2,000 into an agreement or a study, I guess, to look at consolidating the DDA with the chamber and with TIFA and EDC. If they do that, instead of being a $2,450 profit, it would just be $450 profit if they put the 2,000 into that study. Questions on that? Next is the CDBG fund, Fund 250. Years ago, this was a pretty active fund. The city had money from MISTA to allow properties around, to allow homeowners around town to rehab their houses. That was years ago when we had a fairly sizable staff in the building, code, zoning, and planning department. For a number of years, we've really had no staff there to speak of other than just code enforcement. And the last time we had much activity in this fund, we worked with Community Action in Battle Creek. They agreed to administer some loans for us here in Albion. So we use funds out of we use money out of this fund to rehab some houses in Albion, and that used the majority of the money in that fund. So really it just kind of sits there now. And if any of these houses are sold, depending on how the deed was written, or the mortgage, I guess, was written, they may have to pay that money back to the city, and it would go back into this fund. So every once in a while we'll get a request that there's somebody selling a house, and we will have to give them a payoff amount, and they will pay back the loan that they got when they rehab their house, and it goes back into this fund. But for the most part, there's not a lot of activity. Questions on this one? Fund 265 is our drug law enforcement fund. This fund has primarily been, well, I guess I got a couple things going on. And historically, a lot of money come into this through forfeiture. That part of it is slowed some, but they also get some reimbursement from IRS for the wages and stuff for some of the detectives working here at the city. There has been for a couple of years a large, I don't know what your proper legal term here, but a case, I guess, for lack of a better term, here in town that would result or should result in this fund receiving a very large income from forfeiture. Unfortunately, it's a federal case, so it's drug out a lot longer than we had anticipated. Each year we keep saying, is this going to be the year we get the money? Thought for sure it'd come this year, and here we are in November. Haven't seen it yet, so we actually put it into the 2021 budget now because we're not sure if it's going to hit this year or not. So as you can see, it's going to be a sizable amount, about over 400,000. So like I said, assuming that plays out like it's supposed to, that fund will be sitting pretty good. And that fund has helped a lot with public safety and helping a lot of the tools, the equipment they use and stuff. So it's been a big benefit to the city to have that fund and be able to use those forfeiture monies for keeping public safety up to date on their equipment and a lot of the stuff that they use. So any questions on that one? The next one is Fund 275, Albion Building Authority. This fund is kind of shrinking. Over the years, they have been selling off some properties. They've kind of decided, the board has taken the stance that they're really not in the business of being landlords, so they've been selling off some of their properties. There are a few city properties that still are under their ownership. The biggest one, of course, is the fire ambulance building where the fire trucks and ambulance park. And that building, like I say, is an ABA building. So there is lease payments every year from the ambulance authority and from public safety to use that building. They then in turn obviously pay utilities and maintain the building. But there's no significant change in that one. I don't know, does anybody have questions? We're looking at a projected income in 2021 of about 8,000, and conservatively we've said that they could potentially lose about 2,000 this year. Although again, we try to make current year figures pretty conservative, so I would be surprised if that happens. They'll probably be about break even. Questions on that one?
I have a question. What happens to the revenues from selling the buildings?
A lot of them have been put towards other things. So for example, when the behavioral health building was sold on South Superior, that money was put towards the renovation and purchase of the food hub building. When the EDC building sold, which was the old chemical bank building up by the post office there, I don't recall them. I can't remember the price, but it wasn't, I don't think they really took a lot of money in on that, and that just went into their revenues. So it's kind of just used on some other things that they, some other properties, I guess, to get them, do some repairs and stuff to some other properties. But the revenue when they sell it will stay generally in that fund unless they choose to, like I said, in the case with the food hub, they, spend it on the food hub. But does that make sense?
Sure, thanks.
Yep. The next one is 277 Maple Grove. Maple Grove used to be under 275 under the ABA. It still is under the ABA board. However, a number of years ago, Misha took over the administration of the HUD money that comes in for the assisted living there. And they said, no, you got to have it set up in a separate fund. So we created Fund 277. And the only thing in there is the operations of Maple Grove. Maple Grove does fairly well. They bring in, obviously thanks to the HUD and the assisted living, they bring in a sizable amount of federal grant money. And in turn, they provide the facility for the seniors out there. And they have been doing some significant remodeling. The other thing that MSHA required them to do when they took over the administration of it was to set up a reserve for a capital asset replacement for future improvements out there. That is a balance sheet item, so it's cash. Every month they require us to put about $5,800 a month into this account. It was up to over 300,000. Offhand, I don't know. They used a bunch of it last few months. Well, I can't remember exactly when it was. Last fall, I guess, a year ago, because it was about this time a year ago. They redid the whole heating system there. I think it was over 100,000 that they put into the heating system. They've been doing some new lighting, security, some doors, and all kinds of stuff. So they also have a large pot, if you will, that is set aside for improvements out there. So they're spending money on the property, even though they're not necessarily reflected on the revenue and expense sheet here, if that makes sense. And as it is, they're looking at a projected profit this year of about 33,000, just under 33, and next year about 48,000. So questions on that one?
Yes,
Next
I have a
one.
question. I'm sorry, I have a question. So why is it not shown in here or underneath something, that extra money?
Because it's cash. It's just sitting in a balance sheet like a cash account, but it's a reserved cash account, so it's sitting on their balance sheet as an asset. And like I said, every month we take cash out of their operating bank account and put it into this reserve account. So it's just been building for a number of years. So if you look at their balance sheet, and if you want, I could print one off and send to everybody. It's if you look at their balance sheet, they got, like I said, I can't remember after they did the heating and some of the stuff they did last year exactly where they're at, but I know a couple 100,000 in there.
We transfer about 5,800 every month into that reserve account.
Okay, yeah, I heard that part. Thank you. So yes, I would like to see it.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note. Okay, well, I'll send it out.
Okay,
I'll
thank
send
you.
it out to everybody.
I just
Thank
had
you.
a question also about the revenues. Are those all from federal grants? Is that where all of that money is coming from?
It is not. I will say on average, it's roughly 50-50, half from the tenants and half from HUD. Of course, it varies a little bit, each year, depending on the tenants because of their calculation that they go through on what they're eligible for. But for the most part, it's about 50-50 if I recall.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Other questions on Maple Grove? Next one, Fund 296, that's also under Amy, the EDC, and that one actually is being scaled back a lot. This was a revolving loan account that the city had. It's federal money, and it was to be used to help businesses, startup businesses get started. They could borrow money from revolving loan fund at low interest rates. And like I said, for new startup businesses, and there were several, I won't say several, there's some businesses in town that did take advantage of it and borrowed a significant amount, are doing pretty well. The problem is on the federal level, they keep getting stricter and stricter on all the reporting and the requirements and the auditing and all the other stuff that's involved. And with current interest rates being so low at banks and stuff, there wasn't a lot of demand lately, and the reporting requirements, I guess they felt, Amy and her board made the decision that it really was costing too much in the reporting. I know we had to have our auditors do a special audit for them just because of this revolving loan fund. So we were incurring additional audit costs and stuff as well. So Amy had talked with the government, and they've worked out an agreement where we have repaid a large chunk of that federal money back to the federal government. And about all this fund is going to be doing now is just continuing to collect the loan payments for the loans that are already out there. I don't think she has any intention, or at least initially, of issuing any new loans. Now that obviously could change, I suppose, in the future, but at this point, that's what she's doing, and that's why there's such a large expense in 2020, because that was where we had to pay that money back to the federal government to kind of remove us from all their conditions and requirements. So questions on that one? Now we get into a couple that are debt service funds, and these funds are simply created anytime we have any major debt in the city. We'll create a new fund just to service that debt. So the way it works is money will be transferred in most cases, money is transferred in from other funds to cover the debt payment, the annual debt payment, or once in a while, like in the case we have our one debt millage. So once in a while, it's tax money that comes in. But in the case of the first one, 263 energy, generator bonds, et cetera, a number of years ago, the city had a company come through, and it escapes me now, the name's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't think of it. But they did a study on all the properties and tried to determine where they could make them more efficient, energy efficient. And they did a number of things. They brought in some backup generators at the plants. And like I said, most of it was energy type savings, going to more efficient pumps or boilers or that kind of thing, weatherization, all that kind of stuff. And that was a big bond that was used to do that. So right now, many of the funds that benefited from that study pay into this fund, and then we in turn make the annual bond payment each year. So it's really money in, money out. And this particular bond will mature in October of 2024. That's the other good thing I guess I'll mention with the city. The nice thing about where we're at, considering a lot of the hardship Albion has been through in a number of years, is we don't have a lot of debt. And the debt that we have, we've paid some off in recent years, and other debt is getting very close to being paid off. So again, in 4 years, we'll have this one paid off. And as you can see, it's a pretty good hunk that we're paying $174,000 a year in bond payments, and that'll be paid off in 4 years. So questions on that?
I do have a question. I guess, so you mentioned that this was conducted by a business. Was it Consumers Energy by any chance?
You know what? I knew it started with, I knew it started with H, and I couldn't think of it. It's Honeywell. It was Honeywell.
Honeywell. Okay. So I'm just trying to understand what so they audited our processes so that we could improve upon them, and then the places that they found that we could improve that benefited from that are what are contributing to the cost of the actual audit that they did. Is that the process?
Well, in addition to the cost of the audit, they also implemented a lot of their ideas. So there was actual purchases made. But also, if you look at the fund name, it was kind of hard to fit it all in there. It's we've got the slashes there. it was an energy study, but they also purchased a large generator, and then they also did some work at the 425, and I think that may have been when they purchased a part of the 425, but I'm not certain. This, I'm just looking, I had the maturity date, but bear with me here.
The idea behind the study kind of was, if you have an old boiler, it costs you more to run than a new boiler. So if you install a new boiler, it will pay for itself over time.
Absolutely.
The way it was set up to work.
I was trying to look back to see when this was started. In my folder that I have, it only goes back to 2010, and I think it was started even before that. I think we refinanced it once when the interest rates got low. So it goes back a long time. I don't really remember everything that was done because I can't remember if that was all started after I was here or if some of it was started before I was here. It goes back a number of years.
I
So
know at the wastewater plant, we got doors and windows and lights.
yeah, I don't know if you heard Patrick. He said they got like new doors, new lights, windows, stuff like that out the wastewater plant. So, any place that benefited there, and we tried to prorate what they pay into it. If you just got a little bit of a benefit, your payment into this fund is small. If you got a lot, it's a large. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'm just curious, when you were mentioning the city's debt, is there a section where that's consolidated so we can see it all in one place?
Not on this, but there is, and actually the best place, or easiest, I guess, if you want to look, is if you go on the city's website, there is that little kind of a colorful thing called Munetrics.
Okay.
And if you click on that, it shows you all kinds of financial information, and one of them is the city's debt, and it lists all the loans that we have.
Okay.
It's actually quite a bit of financial data, and that actually is part of a requirement that the state makes us set that up or update it every year, and actually it's due at the end of this month for this year. But that's what determines if we get our revenue sharing money or not. So if we don't do that, we don't get our $1 million in revenue sharing. So anyway, it's pretty informative. It's not, we don't really think to go and look at it a lot, but it's there. And if you want to click on it sometime and poke around, it gives a lot of information. But if you have questions, definitely come in or give me a call or whatever, and we can go through numbers too.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, it looks like we're gonna get a demo.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think scroll down, Scott, I think down towards the bottom is some those green bars. One of them, does it say debt or something? I can't remember where. Yeah, it might be under there. Yeah, and then there's, I think, a debt. One of those, I think, is the
Long-term debt as a percentage of taxable value.
yeah, there's one of them that gives actually I'll have to look at it. Like I said, I don't go into it a lot because I just go into our system. But so I can't remember where everything's at. I look at it once a year, which is basically what I'm getting ready to update this. But there's actually a schedule in there somewhere that lists all our debt. It gives you the amortization schedule for each one of our debts, showing how much the annual payment is and all that. So
Does that look like we're at like 1% or so of our?
Pardon me?
It looked like
sorry?
the debt was 1% of our. I don't know if that's our annual budget or our revenues.
I think they generally look at your millage. It's based on your millage levy, if I recall. I don't know on this one per se. This one's a taxable value. Yep. And when you apply for debt, there are limits on like how much bond debt you can have outstanding as a percent of your taxable value and all that. Yeah, we've always been well under it because again, we don't have a lot of debt, so we've been fortunate that way.
Thank you.
Yep. The next one is this 364 fund. It's a gold bond or general operating bond for the water project. This one actually paid off a couple of years ago. However, it was tied to a millage rate. And it makes it kind of confusing because when you think of delinquent taxes that go to the county and then the county goes through the foreclosure process and then eventually the sale, sometimes when those properties are sold, it may be, 3 years after the year that the tax was levied. So even though the bond paid off, there are a few properties out there that are still being foreclosed on, and every year then when the county forecloses and sends us settlement checks, we sometimes collect a little bit of money that was part of that millage. So, but eventually this will just go away. It's shown here more for historical data than anything. We don't anticipate any activity in 20 or 2021 because again, that one has matured. So any questions on that one? The next one is the infamous sidewalk fund. And I think, yeah, most everybody's familiar with this one. So we really haven't done much in the last year or two with it because we're kind of all, there's been that discussion on what we want to do. But we know that we got to do something with it. We know we're getting to a point where, come on, this program's ended. Let's apply this money to something. So for 2021, we put in $340,000 for contractual projects. I don't know where they'll be. I don't know that anyone knows exactly where they'll be. We don't have any solid quotes or anything yet. But we do have, again, we have ideas. We talked about handicap ramps at the intersections all around town. There's been other discussions on where we want to spend it, but our hope is that in 2021, we come up with some good ideas and everybody agrees on where we want to spend it and we can use it and kind of do away with this fund. So that $340,000 will not wipe the fund out entirely, but it'll take it down. There'd only probably be 10 to 15,000 left in that fund. And we could spend that too if we, come up with the right projects. It's just that at this point in time, nothing was budgeted or we didn't have any quotes or any bids or anything. So we just said, hey, let's try to get this spent somewhere. So we put in $340,000. That'll spend it down significantly. And we'll see what happens. If we have to amend it, we can do that. Is there questions on that one?
I do have a question. I'm familiar with it on the end of what are we going to do, but I'm not familiar with what this was intended and what the community knew. I'm assuming it was some sort of special assessment or a millage of some sort, because when I was going and talking to the residents of the 5th precinct, they were really displeased that what they had paid has not actually improved their sidewalks. So I'm curious what people were told.
What this originally was in, I can't remember the exact year, it was a 10-year millage a 10-year special assessment where every parcel in the city would be charged $50 per year for 10 years. And it was to go into this fund to fix sidewalks around town. Over the course of the years, I know there were a lot of sidewalks fixed. I know they had back early on, I remember getting bids from different contractors. And throughout the summer, they would be at different parts around town replacing sidewalk. I think to say that this probably wasn't well thought out is probably an understatement. The money that come in obviously is way short to fix every sidewalk, every foot of sidewalk in town. So it started running into problems, as we got going through it. So it's kind of why the last few years we haven't really done a whole lot in there, because it's kind of a dilemma. And I guess keep in mind, this was all done under prior management, prior council, prior management, all that kind of stuff. Not to point the finger, but there were several of us, including our city attorney, that did not think this was, but again, this was even done before the prior city attorney. So we're sitting here now saying, well, probably shouldn't have been done, but it was. What's the best way that we can spend this money to benefit as many people as we can in town? So that's kind of where we're at.
And to go off of that, if you all are aware, a sidewalk committee was formed, and they did, council did vote and approve to have all of the sidewalk ramps replaced and brought up to ADA compliance. I think we had a list of roughly
312.
312 of those ramps. So we are in the process of getting quotes for that project, and that's where we get kind of that $340,000, just a rough estimate until we get that final quote. But it was council approved. I believe it took place just in June, that you all approved to have that project completed. So we are hoping to.
Well, this isn't something that,
Go ahead.
this isn't something that our own city has equipment to do. These are things we have to contract out. Is that correct?
Correct.
For the most part, I mean, the city, the DPW guys have done a little bit of sidewalk around recently, and they've done some good jobs on it. But to do it to this extent, where you're trying to do such a large number of sidewalks or ramps, like in this case, 312 ramps. I mean, it would deplete the department, to where they wouldn't be able to do anything else. So yeah, it would definitely be something we'd probably want to contract out. Other questions on that one?
Are there
And I'm
still,
sure, yep, I'm sorry.
is there still going to be, do you know if there's still going to be monies left after the initial funding that you're going to do for the entrance ramps?
We have a estimate on the
We don't
ramp.
know yet.
We won't know until we receive that final estimate back from the engineer firm who is working to put together this project.
Okay, and if there is monies left, what are you planning on doing then?
It will then, the sidewalk committee will then reconvene to discuss what to do with those remaining funds. And then a recommendation will come before council, and ultimately council will need to decide, either approve the recommendation before them or come up with some other option.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, and I was just about to add, I'm sure that this will be before you as council members again, probably in about too distant future. So I'm sure they'll get into some more discussion on this particular fund before long, because we really do got to decide what we're going to do with it. And you keep in mind, when we do big projects like that, they try to get the bids around and get them ready to put out for bid early, so that you get, the contractors have time to get a jump on it in the spring and everything else. So we would like to start moving on that one soon. The next one is Fund 369. This is the bond for when the fire barn was built, fire ambulance barn over there. And again, the public safety and the ambulance authority pay into this, and then this in turn makes the annual bond payment. This particular bond matures in October of 2028. So it's probably our last significant, or will be the last significant or sizable debt that we have. So like I said, so we got the one maturing in 2024, this one in 2028. And with the exception of just some small equipment ones and a DPW building that's pretty small, will be down in pretty good shape with debt. So any questions on that one? The next one, speaking of the DPW building debt, the next one, 374, is for the DPW building debt. That was for the street garage. It was purchased from the county, and that is an annual payment of $15,000 a year. And again, the departments that utilize that street garage pay into it. So, you know, like park, cemetery, street, or the streets, they all pay into it. And then that money is used to pay this annual $15,000 payment to the county. This one actually matures in July of 2023. So that one's coming up fairly quick. Any questions on that one?
Mr. Mead,
Yes.
I would like to make a recommendation to the new council members that you take some time and go over there and see what you're getting for your money. You will be appalled.
I agree.
Okay. The next one, 590.
Do you have any other recommendation with regard to the current state of the building?
I'm sorry.
I'm just curious with Counselor Smith and his recommendation to view it and make an assessment, if there's any further recommendation with regard to how we should respond to that.
Ms. Lanou, I will leave that to you to make your own determination once you get a look at the property.
Thank you.
The next one, we're getting into our enterprise funds. Fund 590 is sewer fund. As you're aware, the council did vote to raise rates last year, so those will gradually increase a little bit, which is reflected in the increase in revenue that's projected for 2021. However, the sewer fund gets hit the hardest with that energy bond payment. And if you look down at the transfer out figure, they are paying out 2020 and 2021, their portion of that will be $143,800. So they're getting hit pretty hard with that bond payment. Again, that'll be paid off in 4 years, so that'll help significantly. Also, rates, will continue to increase some over the next few years, so that will also help with the profitability of that fund. And the one thing on these enterprise funds that you have to bear in mind too is they actually, unlike any of the other governmental funds, they have depreciation expense in there to depreciate all the equipment, so in this case, all the infrastructure of the sewer department or wastewater department. Not only the plant, but also there's an attempt to put a value on all the pipe that's in the ground and everything else. And then that figure, that value is depreciated over a number of years, and that depreciation expense for each year is part of their expenses. So when you see that loss, it looks scary, to see like, oh, we're looking at 302,000 this year, 262,000 next year. But a large chunk of that is depreciation, and that's not a cash, that's a non-cash expense. So you're not losing the cash. What you're really doing is saying the amount of that depreciation should be available going forward to use. Like if we were putting that in a separate pot or something, that would allow you to have that available to purchase equipment in the future or make repairs in the future. So on the enterprise funds, it's not unusual, I guess, to see the loss. It's kind of like a business. And in fact, that's why they call it an enterprise fund. It is like a business in the sense that If it were a private business, you want your depreciation expense because that gets you to where you don't have to pay taxes with the IRS because you show a loss, but you're not losing cash because, it's a non-cash expense. So it's not really as scary as it looks. Yeah, we needed the rate increase because obviously it'd be nice if we weren't operating at a that sizable of a loss. That would just give us more money to set aside for future improvements or purchases in the infrastructure, but it's not a situation where the fund's going to go belly up. As you can see, there's 4.4 million fund balance in there. So, they're doing all right. It's just, we got to keep the rates in line to cover all the costs of operations so that they can continue to make improvements at the plant and with the sewer lines. Is there questions on that one? Seeing none. The next one is the water fund, Fund 591, and that's also an enterprise fund. So again, it looks a little scary when you look down and say, well, 2020, we're looking at $277,000 loss. 2021, we're looking at 224,000, but again, that includes all their depreciation expense. So they're not losing cash. And if you look, they're at a $5 million fund balance and it's been holding pretty steady. It's come down a little over the years, but it's holding pretty steady. There is some concern of the downward trend, which of course is why we're doing the rate study in water. We feel that though that's going to have to be addressed soon, we hope to get the information back from the engineering firm soon. It'd be just like with the water fund, they'll do their study and determine what they feel the rates need to be at. When that is available, obviously we'll bring it before council and have the presentation, and they'll decide on what they want to do with the rates and the water. So questions on that one?
I have a question. Are there limitations regarding how that fund balance can be applied?
Not really on the enterprise funds. It's completely different on the enterprise funds than it is on the governmental funds. So unless we chose to put some of it as restricted for something, there really isn't limitations on it. But keep in mind, when you look at that number, like when you see 5.1 million at the end of 2021, that's not cash. That is the
value
all of your the value of all your assets less accumulated depreciation. So a lot of the infrastructure, the equipment stuff that has not been depreciated yet is in that figure as well. So it's not like we got 5 million in cash to go, fix things or build a water tower or whatever, but they do have a sizable amount of cash that, at this point they're doing well, but that downward trend is a little bit of an alarm that, hey, we gotta reverse that downward trend. We got to get at least break even on the fund balance every year, or ideally starting to improve some. So.
And do I understand correctly that a water rate increase is actually required in order for our city to qualify for some of the larger improvements that we need?
I'm going to do you want to jump that?
Yes, so with it being enterprise funds, the rates that we charge for these services, we have to recoup enough revenues to maintain the services that we provide. And right now, as Tom mentioned, we are kind of in that downward spiral. So they have not been increased for years. So we do need to increase our rate so that we are back in line to cover our expenses, and then we can qualify for some of the grants and programs that are available.
Like with the USDA, for example, they look at the median household value in the community, and then they they have a, based on their national averages or whatever, I guess, they got a formula that they go through. But they look at it and they say, based on the median household value within your community, they figure a certain percent should be diverted towards utilities or whatever. So that's how they come up with what the rate, or at least that's a big piece of what they use to determine what the rate should be. And I guess their philosophy is they're saying, well, as a federal government, we're willing to help with low interest loans and in some cases even grants. But I think they're also trying to say we got to have some kind of controls in place so that the federal government isn't, funding 100% of your operations or your construction or your infrastructure. I think they're trying to say the municipalities, the residents, and everybody within it, the businesses have some obligation to put money forth as well. So I think that's kind of what they're trying to do from the USDA standpoint, is just make sure that adequate rates are being charged locally so that as projects are or as grants are awarded, that they know that they're not, that we're sharing in the cost, I guess.
That makes sense. I'm sorry to be going such in the weeds, and I'm happy to follow up, but I'm curious if anyone knows what our percentage rate is and what it would need to be, eventually moving up to.
I know they're in the process of the rate study now. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how far they are.
Yeah, they're still working on it, and that rate study will tell us where we need, what percentage our rates need to be at, but we have not received that information yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions on water? The next fund is Fund 661, which is our equipment pool fund. And basically this fund is when all the DPW equipment is purchased for city use, it's purchased through this fund. And then this fund in turn rents out the equipment to all the different departments that need it, whether it be, the major street, local street, wherever it might be, solid waste, parks, wherever. And in turn, that rent comes back into this fund and ideally would accumulate to keep this equipment repaired. One of the problems we've run into is, I think there's a couple things going on. I think number one, we just haven't really had a chance to do a good study on this, but I think a lot of it too is when you look at the size of the city of Albion and compare that to the cost of a single piece of construction equipment now, you can talk, you could have 150,000 on one piece of equipment, and we're a small enough municipality that piece of equipment's not getting used that much around, to all the other departments to cover all the costs of it. But this fund is doing better than it has in the past. So I think we're getting in line with, it probably helps some. We got a lot of equipment from the military that, didn't cost much. So we're able to rent that out and collect rent on that. Some old equipment's kind of been done away with, and I don't know, it seemed that for whatever reason, maybe it's just how it's being reported as well, but this fund is doing better. There was a time where it was pretty questionable on how it was going to be doing, but it's doing all right, even though we're seeing fund balance drop. I mean, it is a concern still, but it's something we need to address. But again, this is more just an internal fund to purchase and try to fund the cost of the equipment used internally in the city. So, if we can acquire grants or something like that to get more equipment, obviously that would be rented out. So then that would increase this. So, there's a lot of options, a lot of things we can look at. It's just kind of been one thing that's been I guess at a back burner to some degree for a number of years with all the turnover and, you know, DPW directors and everything else going on. So questions on this fund? And again, this fund too, I'll add, this fund does have depreciation as well, like the enterprise. So when you see the losses, you know, 24,000 for 2021, potentially 79,000 for 20, that is with depreciation expense. So they're not losing that in cash per se. They're just, you know, not taking in what we would like to see them take in, but it's not anything to panic at this point. So is there questions on that one?
Yeah, so for the equipment that we have out there, after we got the Army equipment and the other equipment that we have sitting out there that is not usable at this time, what's the estimated value if we should get rid of or trade or junk or however you do it, that equipment that's just sitting idle?
We're currently looking into that. So hopefully we can get that done this coming year.
Okay, could we have a summary of what that would look like, please?
Yep, when I get that put together, I can give that to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
The fund set up for replacement of items like your trucks and things like that from year to year?
Yes, to some degree. There's a little bit of exception. The sewer and water generally purchase their own equipment because, again, they are an enterprise fund, like a business fund. What Patrick would like to start is a kind of like Scott has done with the police cars. He would like to have the sewer and water be able to purchase some pickups, you know, get in a rotation where they're purchasing like 1 or 2 trucks a year, and when they get to a point where they are replacing their trucks, they can take those that are being replaced and put them into, or let the rest of the DPW use them, and they should only be a couple years old as opposed to what they have now that are 10, 15 years old. So he's got a plan for a rotation to start getting newer pickups and stuff out there. But again, you know, it's just going to take a little time.
Yeah. And as far as equipment goes, we're trying to be creative with military equipment. We got that 4x4 that we've outfitted with a belly plow for winter, and it's got a salt box on the back. We're looking into getting the other one outfitted the same way. So we're trying to be creative with the little money that we got to get equipment going.
That's good. I'm not complaining. I just see a need for you guys having updated equipment.
Oh yeah, yep, definitely. Next fund, we're getting into the trust funds now, which not a lot goes on with them, being that they are a trust fund. We're pretty limited as what we can do with them. First one, 711, is a cemetery trust fund. When this fund was created for like perpetual care in the cemetery, when lot sales are, when we generate revenue from lot sales, a portion would go into the cemetery trust. I know, or at least had in the past. Are they still doing that, Patrick? Do you know?
Yeah, it's there is perpetual care, but it's involved in the lot sale up front.
Okay. So anyway, over the years, from all the lot sales going back in time, this fund accumulated money. What's kind of odd about it, though, is that the way the regulations are, you're only supposed to use the money, like the earnings from the investment of the fund. So when you look at this, like in this case, you know, they may make $5,000-$6,000 in investment income, interest or dividends or whatever, because as we know, interest rates are pretty low right now. And unfortunately, you can't do a lot with $5,000 or $6,000 when it comes to maintaining the cemetery. So it's a good thought. It's just the way the regulations are, we're kind of restricted on what we can take out of there. So I don't know, it kind of is what it is, I guess, we just follow the regulations and do what we can do, but is there questions on that one? They're, like I said, they're setting at a fund balance. We're projecting that'll end about 260,000 for 2021. So there's money in there. It's just that you're restricted on what you can use it for and how much you can use. So any
Director
questions?
Mead?
Yes.
This might be better for Ms. Snyder, but we should probably check into the fact of over the years, I know that the Abbey has, their original group has disbanded many, many years ago. Did the city actually take control of the Abbey? Do we now own the Abbey? And if so, are there going to be any kind of plans together for refurbishing that because it is on the verge of falling down?
Yeah, we've actually looked into it. I've met with contractors and we're hoping to develop a plan to get the structure sound again. I doubt we'll ever allow people to purchase new crypts, but it'll be, we're looking into getting it back up to snuff so it doesn't fall apart or deteriorate any further than it already has.
Thank you.
Other questions on cemetery trust? The next trust fund is 732, the Public Safety Pension Trust. As you're probably aware, for new council members, the Albion has its own retirement trust fund for the public safety workers or employees. We're probably one of the best funded retirement funds in the state. I can't remember this year where we run around 148 to 150 some percent funded. Most municipalities around the state are not even 100% funded. And I know I've been to a few conferences and stuff where they'll even point out Albion's, they'll make note of Albion's, how well we're doing with our public safety pension fund. So this is a very, very healthy fund. It's a great benefit to the city to have that for the employees. The only thing that I'll say that's bad about it, it's a very difficult one to budget for, only because, as we're all aware, markets can fluctuate so much, and a lot of times it's only, the fluctuation can be simply due to speculation. Maybe maybe the election, maybe the oil pipeline in Kuwait, or so. You never know what's going to change the markets. And because of that, they can take huge swings, in any given month. And the problem is the auditors are always telling us, you have to make sure you approve all the expenditures. So if it takes a huge decline in the market, even though it's not a true cash loss, the value has declined, and to get it to balance, we have to reflect that on our expense statement. It may come back, in the next month, but we just have to make sure at the end of the year that we're not, or try to make sure at the end of the year that there isn't something that's caused a big panic in the market and caused a big decrease in the earning or the values. So therefore, I try to be real conservative. So like in 2020, I just put in there like $1.5 million in losses from the market, simply just to be conservative, so that it'll show that, like, in case we do lose up to $1 million, we can say to the auditors, yes, we accounted for that. Basically is all that is. In reality, I don't anticipate that to happen. If you look at 2021, we're showing about 120,000 in earnings. But again, it's very difficult. You never know what the market's going to do. So, but the fund as a whole, 22.2 million, almost 22.3 million in fund balance. Very, very healthy fund. no concerns with that, so.
Yeah, the other thing to understand about that fund is a lot of other departments, their officers are paying upwards of 15 to 20% of their salaries into those funds, where Albion officers are only paying 4% of their salaries into the funds, and the city's not matching that in any way, where a lot of other communities, the city's matching it, and they still can't keep their funds above 100%. So it's a real credit to our city that we've got this fund and that we actually contribute so little to it and are able to keep it above that 100% mark and have for years.
Yeah, I wish all of our retirement funds are funded this well. Any other questions on this particular one? Seeing none, the next one is 735 Albion Trust Fund. This fund originally years ago was called the Albion Senior Trust Fund. Most of the money, like I said, years ago, Maple Grove was part of the ABA fund. As that fund, as profits grew in that fund from Maple Grove revenues, as well as when that fund, when the ABA fund had, a lot more properties that they were leasing, and their profits would grow, they would periodically transfer those profits into this trust fund. And over time, this fund is, we've gone to this fund for a lot of different uses, asking for donations for everything from computers for the city to, I think, renovation on the Isman House to, I don't know, a lot of different projects over the years. The city's gotten computers and phone systems, and different buildings in town have been renovated. In fact, I think they did even contribute to the Food Hub building when that was being renovated. So this fund, like I said, it's been a big help to the city over the years. The only bad thing is they really don't have any earnings or any income coming into it now, other than just what they earn on investment. Misha, obviously, when they required us to pull ABA or Maple Grove and ABA, when they made us separate those, they said we can no longer put that money into this fund. Instead, we had to put it into that capital asset replacement reserve fund that I talked about, which is in Maple Grove. So money no longer is coming into this fund. It's staying within the Maple Grove fund in a reserved cash account. So this fund, like I said, it's not growing as far as money going into it every year, other than just its earnings from interest and investment. So at some point, it'll probably be depleted, but right now, like I say, it's got 1.1 million in fund balance. So it's a good fund to have. And actually, I mentioned to Haley, we talked, the city needs new servers again here at the city, and there's a few other things we need. We thought about bringing that to council to see if maybe we should approach this fund, to see if we could get some money for some of that stuff. But again, it's, something for.
Shane has a question.
Oh, you got a question, Shane?
So my question related to this particular fund is it's called the Albion Trust. I understand the origins of it. And you said could be depleted in the future. Is there no way for us to hold that in investments or to invest that money on behalf of the city? So that it doesn't have to just be depleted, it could actually earn some money?
It is. It's with an investment firm right now.
Okay.
And we could do that. I mean, if we wanted to say, put some restrictions, I suppose, on how much is coming. I mean, if we're taking large hunks of principal, obviously the earnings on the investment are going to eventually be depleted. But if we want to put some restrictions on how much, say, hey, we don't want this fund to get below a certain amount or whatever, obviously it could stay around, I guess. I think Colin may want to jump in on this. I know they had to, I think this fund, if I recall, this trust like expired a few years ago, and I think Colin had to do some work to extend it or something. I don't know, is Colin out there?
Yeah, so it was my recollection is the original trust was like, I think 20 years, and it was an irrevocable trust, and it expired in I want to say 2017. We redid it as another irrevocable trust, but shortened the time period on it significantly down to 10 years. So yeah, it's now, we basically renewed it in 2017. So it'll stay in its current form until 2027.
Yeah, it's a really nice asset for the city. We should really be smart about how we use it, and I think there are a lot of good things that could come from it. Thanks.
Yep. The next one, and I believe this is the last one, 737's Retiree Healthcare Fund. And this is kind of an oddball fund. There was a short period of time, relatively short period of time, when the city was going to have a self-administered retiree healthcare fund, and employees were required to contribute to it, and it went for, gosh, I don't know, 8 years maybe, I can't remember exactly, 8-10 years, something like that. And when we looked at it closer, it really, the way it was created, we kind of determined we didn't feel that it met the parameter, the IRS parameters and stuff for a retirement fund like it was supposed to, like they're supposed to be, to meet all the IRS requirements and stuff. So basically, we now have replaced it with a retiree healthcare fund through ICMA, who they're in the business to administer those, so they know what they're doing. And we give all the employees here the option to get their money back. All the employees, fortunately, we had records of, how much everybody put in each payroll. Almost every employee opted to get their money back out of it, except for about 4 to 6 that were already retired and were drawn a little bit on it. So those are the only one, and the amount they draw are pretty small. They're roughly around $50 a month. It comes out to about $2,400 a year that we pay out in benefits. And there's, I'm trying to remember what this particular fund, this fund has 38, well, as of the end of 2021, we're projecting it would end the year with about 38,000 fund balance. So taking out only $2,400 a year, obviously there's enough in fund balance to last several years. And again, it's a closed fund. No new employees are going into it or anything. So it basically is just going to pay out the benefit, for its duration, and then it'll probably go away. So any questions on that? And the only thing I'll add as a follow-up, again, other than, like I said earlier, definitely feel free to contact me if anyone wants to come in and talk about some of that. But you will notice we did not talk about a couple funds today, primarily the street ones, the local major and the street improvement funds. And that is because with all the projects that we've gone through with North Street, Irwin Ave, Clark Street, and next year the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, Wild and Hart, whatever. We just need to do a little bit more work to determine, because if you recall, most all those projects had work underground as well, under the street. So there was water lines and stuff replaced. And there was actually some sidewalk ramps and stuff replaced. So we just got to do a little bit more work, get with the engineer and figure out the breakdown of what funds are covering what, or what funds are going to contribute what amounts to those projects. And then we will bring those numbers to you soon.
Yes, to tie into that, we also did not present the recreation fund. As I mentioned previous council meetings, we are with COVID, we are currently looking at restructuring or doing things differently with our recreation department come 2021. So I would like to hold a study session with council. I'm looking to call one Let me pull my calendar up. The week of November 30th, just hold a study session sometime during the evening, during that week to kind of discuss what our plans are here at the city for recreation moving forward. At that time, we will present the street funds, go over those with you as well. But that is our plan, so expect an email with a few dates from myself and so we can get that scheduled. And with that wraps up our presentation to you. I guess if you have any remaining questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Good morning. This is Marcola. I just wanted to know that if I heard you say you was looking for another date as far as November 30th. Will you be sending out something to see if that's a good date for people to attend? Because I know it's like the weekend after Thanksgiving. I don't know if people will be traveling. Can we consider? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I understand that we're getting into the prime holiday season. So I obviously want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I will be sending out a few dates to everyone after today's study session. So keep a lookout on your email. And the sooner you respond to that, we can get something scheduled.
Okay, great. Thank you. And this was an awesome meeting. I thank everybody.
Yes, thank you.
So if there's not any more questions on the budget, we can move into public comments.
I had one question, and forgive me if I missed this. Item 775, the parks. Did we go over that today?
We did not go over in detail, but parks falls under general fund.
Okay.
So I guess
Right.
any
Okay.
questions. One significant change to note, with the recent passing of the 5-year Calhoun County Parks millage, we will see a significant increase in our revenues that we collect under that fund. It is anticipated our allocated amount is $23,000, a little over $23,000. So that is very exciting to anticipate that amount over the next 5 years. So that is the only major change that was reflected on that account, but that is highlighted in the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move into public comments. Are there any public comments this morning?
There are no public attendees or comments.
Great. And does the city manager have any other report other than the fantastic financial report everyone gave this morning?
No, again, I would just like to thank you all for taking the time out of your Saturday morning to participate in this study session. Like I said, I will be following up with an email with a few dates for the week of the 30th, so we can determine a time to have another study session in the evening to discuss recreation, as well as those remaining street funds. And that is all I have.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry, just wanted to note, I did send an email out to everyone. City Hall's operations, effective Monday, we will close all in-person services. With the increase in COVID cases in Calhoun County, we are at above a 15% infection positivity rate, which is, it's getting pretty serious, so we need to do whatever we can to help mend that curve. So we are closing all in-person services effective Monday, the 23rd, through December 8th, just to go in accordance with the recent MDHS orders. At that time, though, we will constantly still monitor COVID cases in our area, and if we need to extend that, continue to delay in-person services, we will do so to protect our community residents as well as our city staff. So that is just the major change to note. If you do need to come in and use cash payment or start a service, you can always call the main City Hall number and schedule an appointment. We will have reduced staffing levels, but we will have staff available 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And with that, that is all I have.
Thank you, Manager Snyder. Are there any council comments?
I know I've been talking a lot. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Haley, Tom, Patrick, Chief, all for being there today. And I'm really excited to see the changes that have already taken place just in the last year, even amidst so many other transitions. I really appreciate all of your work.
Any other council member comments?
I would like to thank everybody for the report. As far as the request that I made, I just want to see how much money we have that's available that maybe could help us to get new equipment, because it's very much needed. It's one of those things, work smarter, not harder. And I just want to support them in any way I can to help, move us along so we can take care and beautify the city of.
Thank you, Councilmember Clark. Any more council member comments?
To everyone, have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Have a great morning, everyone.
You too. Take care.
Thanks, you